there, and welcome back to Everyday Ordinary Life with Mark. Today we're going to talk about a topic that we all deal with on an everyday basis. Backing up just a bit, I want to make sure we know why we're doing this. This vlog is all about how to live your everyday ordinary life for God. And in order to do that, we need to keep in mind this actually is about every day. Sometimes we hear life for God and we think about days of worship, or we think about those pivotal days throughout the year, or those moments in life where we go and do something spectacular for God, or those really feel close to God moments in our lives. I love those times. I think they're great, but we need to look at the living of life in a day-to-day basis type of way. And so we're going to talk about one of those topics today and the way we do that, and that topic is money. Now, when I say money, some of you have different responses. Some of you say, oh, I love money. Others say, I'm scared of money. Others people say, I'm okay with money. I'm doing pretty well. Others say, I have no idea how to handle my money. No matter where you are on this, I've got some advice for you based upon God's word and some great advice I've got years ago that will help you and me to be wise with our money. How do we spend the money that God has allowed us to earn in a way that honors Him? Well, let me teach you some math that I was taught years ago, and I'm not talking about calculus, I'm not talking about geometry, all that's way over my head. I haven't done it in years. I'm not sure I could even do it then, but I bet you can handle this math. Take the number 100. Now make that 100 a percentage, 100%. That 100% equals what you earn. So you have a job of some sort, and you make that. Now, maybe your job centers around doing stuff with your family, and someone in your home earns that. But regardless, as a family, you have 100%, and that equals what you earn. In order to understand how to use money God's way, we need to break that down into 3 percentages. The other 2 percentages that won't be focused on today are very important. We'll focus on those later. And those are two 10% numbers. One of those is 10% that you are going to save. As you take that 100%, go ahead and think from the bat, from the get-go, that you have 10% and you want to save that money. It's important to save money. Another 10% is that giving, that generosity. We'll talk more about that later. So if you take 100 and you take away 10% for savings and 10% for the giving, that leaves 80%. This is what we're talking about today. Now, some of you at this point think, well, I'm already in trouble because when I talk about spending, I'm talking about more than 80%. Well, you're right. You're not off to the greatest start, but it's never too late to start going that direction. Make those proverbial baby steps back to spending within your means, and your means, biblically speaking, should be around 80% of what you earn. And that's going to save you a lot of heartburn in life if you quit living beyond the 80% and specifically beyond 100%. A lot of people, particularly in our culture, in the American culture, that live way above their means, and that is not going to go well for the believer or non-believer for that matter, because things just don't add up. The math does not add up. What I want to share with you is a verse from Proverbs. Now, when you go to just about the middle of your scriptures, you find wisdom literature. It's right after the Psalms. Proverbs, that word is exactly what it sounds like, words of wisdom. Proverbs, you're familiar with this, whether you're familiar with the scripture or not. These wonderful statements of truth, many of them make it into our everyday lingo. One of the topics in Proverbs that comes up quite a bit is money. And in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 4, the wisdom literature reads, haughty eyes and a proud heart, the unplowed field of the wicked produce sin. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the unplowed field of the wicked produce sin. We go on from there, verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. You take those two verses, and we're not talking about agriculture today, we're not talking about plowing fields, but there's a great message in those two verses, and it is this, that you need to work, and you need to be able to use what God has given you wisely. The hasty person is the one that does things too quickly, but the one who plans is diligent. You go back to the previous verse, haughty eyes and proud eyes, the unplowed field of the wicked produce sin. In other words, some people sit back and say, look at all that I have, and forget to think about that God has given them the opportunity to earn that money. He's given you the intellect to earn it. He's given you the physical strength to earn it, and you need to therefore honor God with your money. What I'd like to do today is to share with you 5 things to think about, 5 things to do as you plan for wise use of the money, particularly again, the spending in your everyday ordinary life, that 80% of the 100% that you earn. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is that you just need to think before you spend. Think before you spend. That sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? But there's a reason that marketing works in our culture. A long time ago, I was actually doing a wedding of a friend, and his son came to me and was talking to me. He was from New York City, and he had an interesting job. His job was to do the advertising industry there in New York, one of the businesses there, obviously not the only one. But as he was in this market, he explained to me the interesting way in which they can actually make us buy things. He said sometimes he felt guilty at how well they did at manipulating the American public into buying things we don't need. Now, notice I said we. If you were to come over to my house right now, I could probably show you a handful of things that I bought because this seemed pretty cool at the time that aren't doing anything that are what they're planned to be. I think one of the things I have is this really cool kind of a leaf blower, kind of a vacuum combination that looked really cool and wasn't all that expensive, but it just sits there in my shed and I never use it. I don't know what your leaf blower vacuum combination type thing is, but make sure that you think before you spend and avoid the impulse buys. Now, if you want to buy a cookie here and there, you see something looks good, that's a different deal. But info commercials or someone saying, hey, you got to have this latest thing, be careful of that, particularly, I believe, in the area of technology. Lots of gimmicks, lots of gadgets, don't need all of them. Second thing to think about is this a need or a want? Is it a need or a want? One thing to think about in everyday ordinary spending is make sure you're buying your needs first. Make sure you buy your needs first. And after your needs, if you still have money within that 80% to buy some wants, that's awesome. And I encourage you to do it because God doesn't want us just to go around and keep our heads down and just kind of walk through life with no smile on our face. So sometimes you just need to buy things. You need to buy something for your spouse. You need to buy something for your child. You need to go on vacation. And these are cool things to do, but make sure you're taking care of your needs first. A third thing is you need to watch out for those unnecessary extras. Unnecessary extras. This can be when you rent a car. This can be when you go to a technology store. We won't name any by name. This can be when you go to purchase an automobile. This can be when you purchase a home. This can be when you purchase clothing. There are certain accessories that you just have to have. Avoid the extras. There are people who are trained to help us know the need to buy the extras because that's going to help them on their end. Make sure you know what you're going to buy and go buy that. Don't buy the extras. Now, when I'm saying this, I'm sure all of us, including myself, can think of those times we fell for the extras. This can be as simple as upgrading a car wash, you don't need this, or it can be getting some kind of warranty that you'll never use. Whatever it may be, beware of those. Now, next thing you need to know is to ask this question each and every time you buy something. And again, I don't mean your energy bar or your box of cereal, although that can apply, but I mean something beyond that. As you're spending, ask this question, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Not only is it worth it in value, but is it worth it to me? Is it worth it that I spend this money on this versus saving it for something more important? It's a great question, which leads again back to that idea of buying within our means. One of the things we need to watch, particularly I believe in the Western culture, although it's probably a worldwide issue, is the proverbial comparing yourself to those around you. You've heard the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses. You need to understand in every conversation you have, there is a relativity, meaning that you may talk to somebody who, financially speaking, is much more well off than you. And you may speak to people who, financially speaking, do not have as much as you do. When you're talking to that latter group, you're going to probably feel pretty good about what you have. But when you're talking to that former group, you're going to feel like, wow, I wish I had what they had. That is going to be a big trap. So be careful about those conversations and check your heart. Do I want this because they have it, or do I want it because it really helped my family or myself? Be careful of those things. Another thing to think about as well is that you need to plan ahead. Now, I started off with number 1, which is to think before you do it. Number 5 is a good book into that, plan ahead. What do I mean by this? Well, I'll tell you a personal example. My daughter Kate gets married just in a little bit less than 3 months. She just is about to launch off into that wonderful venture, and we couldn't be more happy for her and Braden. But we know that there's a financial investment. We knew this would be coming at some point. We planned ahead. She's in the middle of college. We have 2 boys that follow her that will also be going to college. We have expenses in our own lives, and we understand that we don't want any of this to surprise us. So we were able to plan ahead. So I am so thankful for those people, my parents, my pastor, other just close friends who over years have given me good financial advice. And I hope this can be some of that for you. I'm not a money expert. I can't tell you exactly how to get out of debt and how to make everything work. But I can tell you this, that the 80%, 10%, 10% math works. If you will live within your means and do that math, which even the math challenge like myself can do, then you will be able to live everyday ordinary life as you spend in a way that honors God and keeps you out of stress. So tomorrow or next week, we're going to talk more about this topic, about one of those 10%. But let's practice the 80 this week. Go out there, live within your means, and remember, number 1, think about it before you do. Thanks again for joining me for Everyday Ordinary Life with Mark, and we'll see you next time.